This is a story from 20 years ago. At the time, I was working as a nurse in the HCU, a high-level care unit. HCU stands for a room where patients with life-threatening conditions are admitted. Though it's less severe than the ICU, intensive care unit, it's for patients who are in a state where regular hospital room care is difficult to manage. I'll never forget young John, who was admitted to that HCU in a coma. John was hit by a drunk driver on his way home from his part-time job and was brought in unconscious and critically injured. Although he pulled through, he didn't regain consciousness, so he was moved from the ICU a few days earlier. I was taking care of John. But since John was always sleeping, all I had to do was change his IVs, take his temperature, and do the same things every day. But his mother came to see him every day. She would go to John's college and get his friends to record their voices, rotating them every week, and play them to him every day by his bedside. Also, she herself would talk to him every day in a bright voice that echoed down the hall. She thought that by doing so, John might wake up. I admired John's mother. I don't know if John could hear the voices of his college friends that she had recorded. And yet she never gave up, going to the college every week to ask John's friends to record their voices, which is not an easy thing to do. And although she must have been heartbroken, her voice when speaking to John was always bright and cheerful. I always felt a warmth in my chest when I sensed the depth of John's mother's love, her belief. I tried to emulate John's mother and act cheerfully, but I could never match her. Both his mother and I spoke to John every day and kept stimulating him, but for about 6 months, there was never any response from John, and the quiet hospital room was always filled with only the sound of the ventilator. It's really hard when nothing changes for months on end. That time, short as it seemed, steadily took hope away from us. Still, John's mom never gave up and came to the hospital every single day. She would call out to him in the same way every day and play the recorded voices of his friends. Usually in a hospital room where you only hear the sound of the ventilator, just the sound of John's mom's bright voice would seem to clear my heart. No matter how much time passed, she never seemed downcast. And one day I couldn't help but ask her, "Don't you ever feel overwhelmed?" I regretted my inappropriate words right away, but I had to ask because she was more positive than any patient's family I had ever seen. John's mom answered without hesitation,
"It's not tough compared to what he's going through. I can't give up. I know he'll wake up."
And hearing that, I found myself tearing up. Just 20 years old and forced to keep sleeping due to an accident. John must have wanted to hang out with his friends, and there must have been many places he wanted to go. He must have had lots and lots of things he wanted to do, too. Suddenly, all that was taken away from him. Even if he miraculously wakes up, there's no guarantee that there won't be any after effects. Certainly, what I'm going through is nothing compared to young John. Thinking about what John's mom always says, I felt encouraged and knew I had to buck up as a nurse. My spine stiffened with resolve. We must believe that he will surely wake up. We can't give up until the very end. That's just how a nurse is supposed to feel, and I'd completely forgotten that these past few months. I can only express gratitude to John's mom for reminding me. From the next day on, I approached John with renewed hope that he would awaken. I called out to him cheerfully and energetically time and time again, hoping to stimulate his senses somehow. I know I can't match a mother's love, but I believe there must be something only I could do, and I kept telling myself not to give up till the very end. One day, as I was wiping John's body and talking to him, I suddenly felt like he had smiled. Well, I was surprised, but when I looked again, he had already returned to his usual sleeping face, so it might have been my imagination. But at that moment, that fleeting smile seemed to say thank you, and I couldn't shake that feeling. It was different this time, and I was consumed by this premonition. I reported the incident to the doctor and even took a brainwave reading, but there were no changes in the results. The people around me and my colleagues said,
"You're imagining things, aren't you? Don't give the patient false hope."
they didn't take me seriously. Yet I felt that something was happening to John, who had shown no change for months, and my heart was more stirred than ever. I didn't want to miss this chance to bring John back to consciousness, so I redoubled my efforts. But even after 1 week, 2 weeks, there was no change, and I began to think maybe I had been mistaken and was about to give up again. But then I saw John's mom, always cheerful, and remembered my resolution never to give up until the very end, and I kept calling out to him brightly and energetically every day. Then, one day, something happened. I was taking a breather with John's mom after calling out to him and stimulating him and chatting with her when she suddenly said,
You know, he used to love ice cream.
and that was that. Really?
That kid would eat ice cream every day. I had to always keep a stock in the fridge.
May I have a moment? I consulted John's mom about something that had just occurred to me.
Is that really okay? I'll go get permission, so please wait a moment.
Looking concerned, John's mom said that, and I left the room. I returned to John's room a few hours later with ice cream in hand.
You got permission, right?
John's mom said in a relieved tone. Earlier in the conversation with his mom, I'd thought about stimulating John with ice cream, so I quickly got permission from the doctor to bring ice cream into the ICU and to use it for that purpose. I hurried to the hospital's store to buy ice cream, but John's favorite flavor wasn't there, so I ran to a nearby supermarket to buy it. John's mom opened the lid of the ice cream and scooped some out with a spoon. Of course, taking full safety into account, she took just a tiny bit on the spoon, and gently placed it on John's tongue after opening his mouth. And then, what do you know? He closed his mouth, and a few seconds later, John's face broke into a happy smile. John, who hadn't changed in months, was smiling now. With a smile that seemed to say he'd been waiting for this ice cream, both of us broke into tears. We did it. We made it, Mom.
I'll go call the doctor now.
Not long after, John woke up. John, who had been bedridden for months, had very weak legs, so we had to watch him for a while as he underwent rehab. The rehab was a daily effort, undertaken with great determination by John and his mom. John, who miraculously had no major after effects, moving and talking energetically. I had only seen John asleep, so I was truly happy to see him this way. Afterward, when delivering meals or doing rounds, I actually talked with John, and he was a very gentle and bright boy, just like his mom. Thanks to John's positive efforts, he was able to move to a general room a month after waking up. I was amazed by his incredible recovery. When he moved, his mom and I exchanged polite goodbyes, and she said,
Keep up the good work from now on.
I saw them off. Later, his mom sent me a letter reporting he's able to walk now, and I was truly happy. In our ward, the story is still passed down as a tale of hope. A few years later, one day when it was already evening, a man in a suit was standing at the entrance to the ward. Who could it be? Maybe a salesman, I thought. Can I help you with something? I timidly asked. Long time no see, said the man with a beaming smile on his face. That smile was the exact one he had when he ate the ice cream in that hospital room on that day. It was John who had grown up to become a fine working adult. He had filled out a bit since then, but he wasn't fat at all. He was too thin back then because he had been bedridden, so seeing John's fine figure now, my vision became blurred with tears. Later on, John and I had our first leisurely conversation together, and he told me that as he gradually recovered, memories would occasionally come back to him, including my bright voice and the funny and somehow interesting story that made him laugh. Such memories had been revived, and he said he just had to thank me one more time and came to see me. It had really reached him. Thinking that, the tears wouldn't stop, and I broke down in tears in front of John. Thank you so much for that time. John bowed deeply. It's all right. That's our job, after all, I said, laughing, trying to cover up my crying. Seeing him overcome that turmoil and living a life full of hope was truly inspiring. I am sure that he will continue to be strong and resilient, never giving up on anything. I firmly believe that. Meeting him and his mother has made me want to continue to have hope and never give up on any patient, and to save as many people as possible.